كوكس وأصدقائه إنهم ما يسمحوا للي قتلوه.
Maybe that's a better way to transform the situation so that we're not always struggling hard and long for a reform that is insecure from the day it's won because of a system that can undo it.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on over 30 cable stations from Vermont to New York City, on the internet at thestruggle.org, our YouTube channel, Struggle Video Media. We begin with a tribute to Jo Cox, the British Member of Parliament and friend of Palestinians and Syrians who was assassinated last month.
في مثل شعبي بسوريا بيقول هو الصديق وقت الضيق. وبالنسبة لنا كدفاع مدني الوايت هيلمتس هي كانت جو من أحد الأصدقاء اللي كان واقف معنا بصدق. نحن خلال عملنا ب3 سنين بصراحة فقدنا 120 صراحة. اليوم إنك تفقد أشخاص أثناء العمل هو أمر كتير صعب. ولكن كنا كل ما نفقد صديق أو كلمة هاي نحن نستبد منه القوة ونقول له نحن على الطريق اللي أنت كنت ترسم لنا إياه. بصراحة النصيحة اللي أنا بوجهها لعائلة جو كوكس وأصدقائه إنهم ما يسمحوا للي قتلوه يفكروا حالهم إنهم انتصروا على القضية اللي كانت تحملها جو كوكس. أنا بتمنى يكونوا هني أقوياء، يكونوا قادرين على حمل الرسالة والإرث الإنساني اللي تركته. بصراحة الخوذة البيضاء هي نحن بنعتبرها اليوم هي رمز السلام بسوريا، ونحن قدمنا لها هي لأنه هي فعلا كانت تعتبر جو كوكس هي ناطقة باسم السلام العالمي.
The White Helmets do incredible work, rescuing people in Syria underneath the rubble from principally Assad bombs. Thousands, literally thousands of lives have been saved by their efforts. It is thus very disturbing that left-wing writer Tariq Ali attacked them by posting this disgusting slander on his Facebook page and leaving it there for days, even though scores of people criticized it. Essentially, Ali was saying that these rescue workers are Al-Qaeda terrorists. He uses the same false logic as the Israeli government when it bombs hospitals and medical personnel in Gaza and in the West Bank. Shameful. Tariq Ali has developed a total blind spot on Syria, on Democracy Now! On July 6th. He implied that the violence in Syria is just another U.S. imperial attack like Iraq and Yemen. For him, Russia does not exist. Here's a screenshot from our website. Note the headline, Obama follows Putin's lead in Syria. The president has made a deal with the head of Russia, allowing him to bomb supposed Al-Qaeda in Syria as long as Russia doesn't bomb a force of fighters the U.S. has in Syria that's attacking ISIS. I say supposedly because Russia has mainly used its air force to bomb anyone opposed to its dear ally, the Assad dynasty. Conveniently forgotten is the solemn pledge to airdrop foods to towns under siege. That was supposed to start on June 1st, but the airdrops have never happened. As we record, there's a new outburst of police shootings and lone wolf massacres. 4 suggestions. Number 1, follow the lead of the British, where only special police forces have guns. They have far, far less gun violence, and people there are much safer. In the first 24 days of last year, there were 59 people killed by police in the U.S. In Britain, the number was 55. 55 killed in the last 24 years. Number 2, ban civilian ownership of assault rifles. No one needs them for self-defense or hunting. They are massacre devices. Number 3, watch what we say. We should be furious in our criticism, but we don't want to give anyone the wrong impression. Our goal is massive, peaceful protest. Number 4, arrest police if there's probable cause of a crime. The head of the NACP in Baton Rouge is entirely correct. The policeman who killed CD merchant Alton Sterling should be arrested. Final point. Why is President Obama overseas at this time? He should be home. He should be in Baton Rouge and Minneapolis and Dallas. Instead, he's in Warsaw at a conference with his NATO cronies working out wars and occupation. He should be in the U.S. We don't have the legal right to publish the photos, so you're going to have to go to your search engine and look for Saudi Crown Prince in the words Michael Bloomberg, Bill Gates, Tim Cook, and Mark Zuckerberg. These American princes of high tech met with the bloody Saudi deputy crown prince to make business deals as the Saudis ravage Yemen. Also see an article on gulfinstitute.org that reveals that Obama met with the same Saudi crown prince, though the crown prince had recently hosted another Saudi who openly encourages Al-Qaeda and ISIS. The U.S. bombs ISIS day and night. But if the Saudis somehow get involved, it becomes complicated. While the big shots were embracing the Saudis, some 40 people in Wilmington, Massachusetts, were protesting Textron, which sells the Saudis cluster bombs. Here's a bit from Massachusetts Peace Action.
Textron is an American technology company that unfortunately manufactures and sells cluster bombs. Cluster bombs are a kind of bomb that are airdropped and open up to release hundreds of bomblets that shoot out over wide areas and either explode on impact or leave explosive bomblets on the ground. Because of this randomized nature, cluster bombs are specifically harmful to civilians. That's why 98% of cluster bomb victims are civilians and 40% of cluster bomb victims are children. So where are the cluster bombs Textron is making going to? Textron has sold almost $700 million worth of cluster bombs to Saudi Arabia, which is using them to attack neighboring Yemen. Saudi Arabia, with U.S. support, has been intervening in Yemen's civil war, supporting its preferred presidential candidate and causing a great humanitarian crisis. The effects of cluster bombing in this has been disastrous.
قريب من مجتمع سواء وصيد القناة صاروخ قرح في الجو واتفلت منه جنابل عنقودي فلت عنده ثنتين قرحا واحدة وواحدة عاد هاي لحد الآن.
Some photos of the action from the website Rhode Island Future. They quote a young man named Matthew Ham, a Boston College student, originally from Seattle. He said, "I don't agree with what Textron is doing, selling weapons and profiteering off of that. They are complicit in Saudi Arabia war crimes, essentially. It's pretty terrible stuff." As we record, the workers at the Trump Taj Mahal Hotel in Atlantic City are on strike. The hotel is now owned by the billionaire Carl Icahn. If you're in the area, go down there, but boycott the hotel. Instead, walk the picket line with the workers. They'll welcome it. To see if it's still on strike or any other situation like that, go to fairhotel.org. Now from a recent Left Forum, part of a talk by Richard Wolff, a retired professor of economics at the University of Massachusetts. He was speaking at a panel at the life and thought of Rosa Luxemburg, a German left-wing leader who was murdered in 1919 by the people who would later become the Nazis. Wolff talks about Luxemburg and very current concerns.
Okay, I thought I'd start with two preliminary comments. Edward was a person who was sure that capitalism, particularly through the modern credit system, which he strongly repeated over and over again, had mastered the problem of crises, one of his strongest arguments. You couldn't build on a theory of revolution when capitalism hit a crisis, because capitalism had figured out how to manage crises, and the credit system was one of the key mechanisms. Looking back at 2008, I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on this particular sort of argument. He said this before the credit collapse that drove 1929, and obviously the one that just has blown the capitalist world away in recent years. Likewise, Rosa Luxemburg, in her answer, worrying very seriously about what would happen to a genuine Marxist socialist party, which the German party was at that time, if his ideas could prevail, if it became a party of reform without revolutionary commitments and content. Where could it end up? It's hard not to see the total self-destruction of the Greek Socialist Party over recent years, and the complete self-destruction of the French Socialist Party that is going on as we speak, and not see some sort of connection between what she worried about and what indeed has come to pass. And then one other preliminary comment of a personal nature. I was lucky enough in my life that my father was a product of the German socialist movement, and that his father, that is my grandfather, was the first social democrat to become Bürgermeister, which is equivalent to mayor, of a small West German town. And one of the family stories repeated countlessly was a story my father used to tell of his first experience, political experience in his life. He believed he was between 3.5 and 4 years of age. And he was sitting on his father, that is my grandfather's shoulder, who led the people of Bensheim in Germany, this little city in the west, to the central square area for one of the great moments of his life as the political leader of this town, which was the arrival of that's how his father talked to him, the greatest orator anyone had ever heard. It was the arrival in Bensheim of Rosa Luxemburg to give a speech, which tells you that there are complicated linkages that bring you from all of that to this moment here. Okay, so Rosa Luxemburg has always been a very important person in my own life and in my own thinking. So to pick up from what Sandra said, and that's going to be my comment for today, she was very clear. Reformism without a revolutionary component integrated into it is as dead-end a political project as the reverse. A revolutionary commitment that does not understand the centrality of participating in, building from, mobilizing around reform. The trick has never really been reform or revolution. I believe her choice of that title had a good deal of irony in it. It was really more, how do you understand the difference between a reform period and a reform that has revolutionary content or implications or matches to a revolutionary project? And that the real struggle has always been that. How do you make the struggles for reform have revolutionary implications, content, and meaning? Now, I could talk abstractly about her, but I don't want to. I would like to imagine that what she would have wanted us to do is to apply what she had to teach us to the current situation. And in the few minutes I have left, I would like to try to do that. But I do want to underscore before I do the enormous power and passion that Rosa Luxemburg brought to almost everything she wrote is another reason why Chris Hedges' wonderful idea to have a series of talks about the great classics, in the hope that all of you and everyone who hears or sees this program this evening will read them. That's the point, to get you interested, excited, to see that there may be something for you to pull out of this literature that can help the movement in this country today. So it's very timely, and I think Rosa Luxemburg, as much as Marx and Tom Paine and the others we hope we'll be talking about in the months and years to come, are literature that we can only urge you in every possible way to avail yourselves of. So I'm going to give you 3 examples, I think, of struggles for reform that could have a revolutionary content. They don't, of course, have to. Struggles for reform can either be with or without revolutionary content, revolutionary components, revolutionary implications. Let's begin with one I'm sure you all know about. There is a struggle for higher wages in the United States, the fight for $15 an hour as a minimum for all kinds of workers, but particularly in the fast food, retail, and other industries where they've been so badly underpaid. Is that an effort at reform? Of course it is. Is it an effort of reform that Rosa Luxemburg would endorse? No question about it. Of course she would. But she would insist on a revolutionary component for it. And what might that be? Well, there are many possibilities. I'm just going to offer you one so that the flavor of what I think she's after can be gotten across. It's one thing for workers to demand a higher wage for the work that they do. It's another thing for workers to say, what in the world is this system in which we have to beg periodically for a living wage from people who take a long time figuring out whether they like to do it or not? If you take a lot of effort and a lot of sacrifice, you get them to do it, and then if you're reasonably normal in terms of your history, 3 years later, you lose it again. And you can start the whole thing over, except with fewer people, because they're not going to struggle the way they did the first time if all they're going to get is a temporary improvement in their condition, because the ultimate situation they face hasn't been transformed. So could you struggle for 15 an hour and say, yes, we are struggling for 15 an hour, but we're fundamentally struggling so that these enterprises are ours, and we will democratically and collectively decide who gets paid, how much, when, and where. And we do all know that if everybody together decided in each enterprise who got paid what, there wouldn't be some people getting $45 million a year and other people getting closer to $4,500. We wouldn't do that. Almost nobody would do that. Only capitalism does that. Second example. We fight very hard, many of you in this room I know, fight very hard for a transformation of the environmental damage that is being done by a rapacious capitalist system. And as I think Rosa would do, let me drive home how and why it's capitalism. I could make an experiment with all of you, which I'm sure many of you would enjoy. I could ask you all, and I do this with my students, I do the idea of it, I don't do the actuality. I have to stress that, otherwise I'll get fired. I could ask you to all stand up, take off all your clothes, you can see where this is going, and then come up, each of you one by one, for many of you this would be your worst nightmare, and you'd come up here naked, and on one side of the room here, I'd ask you to put all the clothes you're wearing that were made in the United States, and on the other side I'd put all the clothing that was made someplace else. And all of you know in advance, even though the experiment would be fun, that one pile would be very high and the other pile would be very low. We don't make clothing in the United States anymore, not much. It's made tens, thousands or tens of thousands of miles away. Why was that done? You all know. That was done to make more money. The people who make clothing knew that they could do at least 2 things in Asia or Africa or Latin America, wherever they went. They could pay much lower wages, and they could either bribe or not even have to bribe their way out of ecological limits on what they spewed into the air and water. So they went to make more money. Nothing else made them move. And therefore, the world you and I live in, we breathe the air, we work the water, is now being polluted on a scale we've never seen before, because instead of our shirts and socks and shoes being made 50 miles away and brought by a truck, they are 10,000 miles away, and they require steamships, etc., to travel the 10,000 miles, dumping every kind of crap there is into the air and the water, fouling the atmosphere, damaging the fisheries of the world in all the ways that many of you know. And that's a result of a capitalist system that makes profit the driver of the decisions about investments. Now, what are you going to do about that? You could struggle. It's a good reformist struggle to limit such things. Pass laws that govern what you can spew into the air and what you can dump in the ocean, etc. And we're doing all of that. Those are good reformist struggles. But once again, they have this sad quality. We're begging. We're begging politicians, mostly in the debt of the people we're faced with, who will take a long time to do any of this. We all know that. We're watching that. We're living in it. And when finally they do it, they'll do the minimum they can get away with. And if we can get beyond that, they will then immediately, upon the passage of the law, begin to evade it. When they're a bit stronger, weaken it. And when they're a little stronger, get rid of it so we can start again. What would a revolutionary content be? Again, there are many. But I'm going to stay with the one I like. Imagine enterprises where the decisions about what they produce, how they produce, and where they produce are made democratically and collectively by all the workers. How many clothing factories in America would have had their workers vote peacefully and quietly in a democratic way to destroy their own jobs, destroy their own communities, and have no income in order that the company could go far away? Not too many. Like, I don't know, I'd give a rough guess, as I'm an economist, we're supposed to make guesses like that. I'd guess sort of none. And that would have made quite a difference. And maybe there's a way to connect the struggle about ecology to the struggle for a different organization of work in the enterprises that produce the goods and services we need as a society to live on. Maybe that's a better way to transform the situation so that we're not always struggling hard and long for a reform that is insecure from the day it's won because of a system that can undo it. We're living the life here in the United States, for those of you who haven't figured it out already, which I'm sure most of you have. We've lived the last 50 years in the systematic undoing of the most ambitious set of reforms ever imposed on capitalism. The reforms of the New Deal. Public employment, a real minimum wage that meant something, a real unemployment program, a real social security system that meant what it said, social security. All of that has been undone. The reforms are insecure, and they're insecure because in capitalism, the people who own the enterprises keep in their hands that ownership and that control, and that gives them the incentive and the resources to undo the reforms as soon and as fast as they're won. Third example. The notion of a third party, an alternative party, a new political formation, whatever you call it, is on the minds of millions of Americans as they watch what's going on and as they participate. And that is an enormous step forward in this country's political maturation. Now, what would a new independent political party, which for all we know may be closer than we thought it might be, what would it do? What would it learn from Rosa Luxemburg? To demand all the reforms we've been talking about, or to go beyond that, to have a revolutionary commitment? Imagine with me, because that's what this is about, applying the work of a thinker like Rosa Luxemburg. Imagine with me a political party that was for all the reforms, $15 an hour, protecting of the environment, all of it. But that also said crystal clearly, we are not a party of capitalism. We are not the Republican Party, we're not the Democratic Party, we're not any of the parties whose very assumptions and presumptions and everything they say and do is that this is the system we have, and this is the system we will have, and this is the system they are pledged to protect. Imagine a party which said, we're not that. We stand for the solution, which is the end of this system and the transformation into a system of organized production of all the goods and services we need, in which every single worker involved is an equal, one vote, one person decision maker about what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the profits that everybody helps to produce in every enterprise. And this is the party that is going to be pushing for the reforms on the way to representing itself as the party for the party of a radical transformation of the organization of production. When I read Rosa Luxemburg, that's the lesson I got. Thank you very much.
Coming up July 24th, the great march in Philadelphia against fracking. Hope to see you there. That's the struggle for today. I'm Stanley Heller. Until next week, good evening.